and then what has happened since then?
Okay.
Like, yeah.
Fantastic. So we are Chris and Cherie of Beyond the Veil, and we are restreaming it over to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Beyond the Veil. So if you don't mind, really quick before I forget, how can people find your channel?
So it's Nina the Mystic on YouTube and Facebook, or just go to my webpage, ninathemystic.net. All my links will be in there as well.
Okay.
So
awesome.
Yeah.
And let me compliment you really quick on your setup. I love the color scheme you have going on in the background. I love everything you've got. You've even got the little vaporizer thing in the background.
Oh, it's great.
It's giving me some inspiration on what we can do a little better back here too.
Yeah,
so,
it is.
Yeah, thank you for that, first of all.
I love your setup too. I mean, that was an inspiration to me, actually. That's kind of what, So.
Yes, that's so cool.
I love hearing that. I love hearing that.
That is really neat.
So yeah, youtube.com/Beyond the Veil is where you can find us. Our journey has been quite interesting. Cherie, do you want to take it away?
Well, yeah, I guess. We started out actually as just researchers ourselves. We were online, both of us, on a forum, actually. It was called the Prison Planet Forum, because we both felt like we were in some kind of prison world, and we didn't know what it was made of, but we knew we were in a prison of some sort, a prison of the mind, more than anything else. And we started learning together alongside all these other people that were in this forum. And on a daily basis, we were discovering more and more things about our Constitution and how that's been kind of chipped away at ever since 9/11, and then how the whole fact that 9/11 wasn't what they said it was, and all of these revelations we kind of came across at, not together, but at the exact same time. Because at the exact same time that I was waking up to the eugenics programs, and it all started when my son was actually hurt by a vaccine. He actually got the virus that he was supposed to be getting the vaccine against. And this was back in 2004, 2005. So that's what we're talking about right now. But ever since then, I've had a passion for discovering what about eugenics has gone on in the last 50 years. And then I called into this radio show, and Chris heard me talking to the host, and he said, "Wow, she sounds kind of cute." And we started talking online, and it wasn't that we fell in love. It wasn't anything like that. It was that we rediscovered one another, and we kind of discovered that we had both been on this journey for a very, very long time, and that we belonged, our souls were kind of half and half of each other. So he's half of what makes up my soul, I'm half of what makes up his soul, and we call it twin flames. That's the best way to come up with it. He's the good half. I'm the demonic, evil half. But as you can see, we were discovering all these 3D things, but at the same time, there were more spiritual changes happening as well. And it was when those were at its peak, for Chris at least, when we actually met in person. And it was just a joke. He was joking around. He was frustrated because he had asked the person he was with at the time, because I was with somebody else, he was with somebody else. There was no real reason like why we would get together unless it was something incredibly important that we needed to do together. And he asked me jokingly, "Hey, do you want to go see David Icke with me?" Because he had tickets to go see David Icke. And I said, "Yeah, come pick me up." And within a few days, we were together and hanging out and driving on our way to Santa Fe, New Mexico, all the way from Texas. And throughout that trip, we did fall in love, but it wasn't as simple as falling in love, because we both had very complicated circumstances going on in our lives at that time. And so we barreled through all of that together, and we kind of just dropped everything that we were doing previously. We dropped everything and just went to each other, and we started building. And within about 2 or 3 weeks, was it, babe, that we started the show? And
It was November 5th, 2009.
yeah, November 5th, 2009.
Remember the 5th of November. And we had no idea what we were doing. We just knew that we had to do something.
Yep.
So it started, of course, with the many different layers of the veils that have been over our eyes. I mean, you know, we're programmed from the very beginning as soon as we enter this matrix. And you have the political programming. I mean, it starts with the school spirit programming. It starts with the sports programming, you know, your home team against their home team, and it's all these little divisive little things, and you break through all of that, and then you get to the political, and then you choose left or right, and then you realize that's all just the left-right hand of the same monster. Then you break through even more boundaries, and in our particular journey, we came across religion and different types of spiritualities and things like that we had to break through, and then we broke through even that, and then came to a point where we realized the nature of reality is much more complex, yet much more simplistic than what we had initially believed it to be. But when you get through all of those layers, then you come back, in my opinion, to self. And it comes back to that age-old question, who are you? Who are we? And why are we here? And where did we come from? And we started digging deeper and deeper and deeper into that. And we had no idea that the journey was going to take us to where it took us. I mean, it all started with breaking down politics and getting into the conspiracy theories and understanding the truth behind 9/11 and realizing that the lies that we have been told throughout our entire lives are so vast that it's amazing that there is literally no truth that is presented to us. If we want to find truth, we have to have the will and desire to really be able to break down all of our BS belief systems, and really have a desire to get to those truths. And those truths are never handed to you on a silver platter. And whatever comes knocking on your door, be it politics, some guy campaigning for somebody, or religions, trying to push a particular religion, that's all part of the deception. And you have to really challenge everything that you thought that you knew in order to get to what lays beyond the veil.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of funny because I feel we've kind of had the same kind of journey with all the I've had so many death and rebirths with the religions and then into the truth movement and then when you're in there, if you get into Christianity, into the fringe, then you start getting into the flat earth and all, like there's just so many psyops and so many rabbit holes and so much distractions. Unbelievable, you know. And when this whole situation that's going on now started, I was like, oh, okay, this is how they're going to do it.
Oddly enough, our first show was about the swine flu. And they were talking about the vacation. You know, we're live streaming on our YouTube channel, so I'm going to use some code words here.
Sorry about that.
But it's interesting that we chose the word vacation to use in replace for that other, because what is vacation? Vacation is to vacate. And right now we're seeing a vacation, a vacating of consciousness with this whole thing that they're sticking people with. So it was about the swine flu pandemic and everything that's happening now. We were talking about on our very first show back on November 5th, 2009. And we knew that this was coming. We knew that this was all part of the agenda and that they were planning all of this. I never imagined that we would see this in our lifetime, though. To watch this happening now in our generation, it's mind-blowing, and it's really separating the wheat from the chaff, in my opinion. Those who are really seeking the truth are going to find it, and they're trying to bury it more and more and more with censorship, with blocking people. I mean, they're even blocking Dr. Malone, one of the inventors of the mRNA technology, and saying, no, listen to the fact checkers, listen to the 20-year-old fact checkers that are writing, you know, BS articles in 20 minutes, and don't listen to the inventor of the technology. Don't listen to the experts like Dr. Boshi, for example, or Dr. Bosch. I never know how to pronounce his name, but
it's like Basha.
Basha. Okay.
Yeah.
His credentials are, I mean, he was part of the WHO for a while, a Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. He has everything to lose by talking about what he's talking about and nothing to gain whatsoever. Don't listen to any of those people. Just listen to the fact checkers out there. But at the same time, it's becoming more and more transparent because they're pushing the propaganda so hard that when they push it so hard, it becomes so transparent. But we have been building up and not waiting for this, but expecting this. And so many of us were caught off guard because this has happened so many different times. Sheree and I were actually just watching an old news clip, and at the bottom it says MERS outbreak. Remember when it was a MERS
outbreak?
We've had swine
alert.
flu, we've had MERS, we've had Ebola, we've had
Zika virus.
countless, Zika virus, everything. And so it's like the boy who cried wolf. Like, the wolf, that's not really a wolf. That's not really a wolf. And then all of a sudden, whoa, wait a second. Hold on. Here's the wolf that we've been talking about now, finally at our doorstep. But it's a very interesting time that we're in during this whole global reset process.
Yeah, it's funny. 10 years ago, I do believe that they were probably going to do this 10 years ago, but something happened where they delayed it 10 years. But 10 years ago, actually, at that time, I wasn't actually awake yet. I was in school at the time, and 2 of my classmates were diagnosed with the swine. And I was sick as well, but it wasn't sick enough that I didn't go to school. We all still went to school. We weren't that sick. It was just like a cold. That's all it was. But I knew it was that because 2 of them were diagnosed. And watching the news, of course, I was all sucked up into the news. Have to watch that morning, noon, and night, And ever since 9/11, actually, that was completely addicted to that stupid thing. Watching the lineups, people like 2-3 blocks down the road lining up for the vacation for that. And I never did. I don't know why. Maybe it was my intuition, whatever it was. I never did, though. But I remember thinking, I wonder what's going to happen to those people in 10 years. Never knew that in 10 years, this, is happening. And they're lined up again. They're lined up again. Same people.
Well, oddly enough, a microbiologist just came out, and she pointed out some very real facts. The smallpox vacation, they pulled that after there were 24 deaths reported, and they said this is too much, and pulled that. VARS is reporting 13,000, and they're only reporting 1%. And so you times that and do the math, that's about 1.3 million people that this thing is affected. And they're still pushing it on everybody. So there's definitely an agenda behind this. They were looking at it under a microscope. And I think it was a different microbiologist that had taken it. And there's some interesting facts behind this thing. I didn't know if you wanted to go in this direction or more, consciousness based, but it kind of all ties in together. Because
it does kind of, doesn't it?
It really does, because this thing that they're injecting into people right now, under a microscope, there's actually images of it turning into an octopus-like creature and coming up, and it's a sentient being that is self-aware that's coming up underneath a microscope. There was another video that was showing all of the proteins that are created, and they all start to merge together and start to build this kind of spider web-like network, this structure. And she pointed out that this thing has to be kept under minus 70 degrees temperature, which has never been the case before. They always keep these things at minus 20 degrees. Minus 70 degrees is enough to freeze any kind of nano-type technology. So it's interesting that they're keeping this under 70 degrees. Once it gets over minus 70 degrees, once it gets over minus 70 degrees and enters a human body and actually, gets up to levels over freezing, it actually comes alive, and you can see this under a microscope. I theorize, or we speculate, that this is tied into artificial intelligence, injecting people with certain type of nanotechnologies to further hook them into artificial intelligence. And really, we are looking at transhumanism right here at our doorstep. And the same microbiologist was actually talking about how this violates the Nuremberg treaties and this violates the Geneva Convention.
Absolutely. Because
they're doing experimentation on people and they're mandating it. And that was one of the big things in the Nuremberg trials about doing human experimentation on people against their will.
Right.
And even the whole idea of this face diaper in and of itself violates the Nuremberg Treaty.
And the Geneva Convention.
And the Geneva Convention.
Yeah.
So she raised some really interesting points. You're not going to find that video floating around for too much longer, though, because that's the type of information they're trying to silence.
Yeah, I noticed that, Nicki Minaj or whatever her name is, there come out, one of her friends, I guess, male friends, having some issues down below after taking it.
Hmm.
And I've heard that this is an issue with the young men. Yeah. So, I mean, if that doesn't scare you, I don't
Hmm.
know what will. The guys have problems down there. That's it.
Well, you've got to think about this too. I mean, she's another person. She has everything to lose and nothing to gain
That's
by
true.
talking about
Hmm.
what she's talking about.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, those are the people that we really need to pay attention to the most, because they're risking throwing everything away
Right.
to share their experiences and their analysis of the situation.
People are losing
Yeah.
their
Until
licenses
she
right
gets
now.
shut down.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Until they shut her up.
Nurses are quitting. I mean, police officers are quitting. I just
Hmm.
watched a TikTok video about a guy resigning in Washington State for multiple different reasons. Number one, because they've defunded him. Number two, because the public hates them. And number three, because internally they're trying to force this on everybody, and they're not wanting to go along with it. Nurses don't want to go along with it. They were talking about
Mhm.
calling in the National Guard over in New York as well to fill in at the hospitals because they can't get enough staff there. I know here in Las Vegas, several other places, you see now hiring signs literally everywhere.
Everywhere.
And I'm asking
Everywhere.
myself, you've got all these unemployed people. Why don't they want to work? Because they don't want to. They don't want to go along with this. They're trying to say 70% of the population is taking it. I call BS on that.
Yeah, they tried to say 51% of Nevadans have all
I
gotten
know.
it.
No.
They're
Full.
saying 85 here in Canada, 85%. And I call that too, because I don't think so.
Yeah.
And here in Canada, it's mandatory by October 13th. Okay, so on the 13th, next week,
Oh, the 13th.
if you haven't had your vacation, you cannot show up to work in any healthcare or federal workers. And the private sector is right behind.
Yeah.
So there's going to be, so what's going to happen to the healthcare system? We're already short nurses.
It's going to collapse, and I will tell you why.
Yeah.
What happened last year proved to us that we can't handle any kind of pandemic type of situation. We just can't. We cannot, with the current system that we have and the current people running it. We can't handle it.
Yeah.
We could have handled it had the same administration stayed in office. We would have been able to get rid of it, no problem, within a few months.
Well,
I really believe that. Go ahead.
We've been studying this depopulation agenda for quite some time.
Mm-hmm.
And up to this point, it's been voluntary.
Right.
You want to eat GMO food, all the information is out there
Yep.
about the GMO food. You want to drink high fructose corn syrup, all the information is out there.
Nobody's forcing you to drink
Nobody's
it.
forcing you to do it. People
Yeah.
are doing it on their own. And it's almost this kind of
Luciferian
I don't want to
system.
call it Luciferian, but we'll call it for that for lack of a better term. Luciferian principle where they have to put it out in front of you first, and then if you volunteer to go along with it, knowing what you're going to get, then you deserve what you get. And up to this point, that's what it's been, and we've just been sitting back, just kind of trying to warn people. But now, they're mandating it to the point to where you're not going to have a choice. You're not going to be able to buy. You're not going to be able to sell. You're not going to be able to eat. You're not going to be able to have a house. You're not going to be able to do any of that unless you go along with this depopulation agenda. And as this microbiologist stated, they found proteins in there that are what's the term? Not proteins. Filaments that lead to mad cow disease. And she's talking about how
Prions.
prions, that's the term, prions that are similar to mad cow disease, which means that people who have taken it are probably not going to be here in 5 to 15 years.
No, they're not.
These are her words, not my words. But it's all been building up to this New World Order agenda that takes us all the way back to the very beginning of our journey when we met on the Prison Planet Forum. And we're listening to Alex Jones, and he was warning about that as well, how we all, many of us probably were introduced to all of this by Alex Jones, people like Alex Jones, David Icke, people like that. And there was a short period of time there where I was critical of Alex Jones because I felt like I was constantly living in fear. And I was listening to all this fear-based stuff and waiting for the next 9/11 to happen, and nothing was happening. You'd have a small school shooting here, a small school shooting there, but other than that, there wasn't this big global event that we were waiting for. And just as everybody started to kind of chill out and go, okay, it's not going to happen, boom, they hit us with it, and we're right in the middle of it.
It's always that way, I find. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
like
right
it's
when
like
you
that.
start to give up.
Like that famous
Yeah.
saying, there's a quote by Al Pacino from one of his movies. I don't remember which one it is. I think it's Godfather 3. You know, just when I thought I was out, they pull me back in.
I know.
And that's how
Yeah,
I felt in 2020.
I actually consciously made that decision. I was like, okay, you know what? I have to let this go now. It's really, stressing me out. And nothing's happening. I'm just gonna go back to not being asleep, but just enjoy myself, enjoy the kids and whatever, and not worry too much. And then bam, sure enough, there it is. And it's like everything. And then now I'm back on the soapbox, like everything. And the funny thing is that everything, because as soon as it happened, I was like way ahead of time. So of course, I ended up losing all my friends and whatever else. But it's funny how the family now, they're like, holy shit, everything she said is actually coming to pass. It's almost like word for word. Everything I said is all coming to pass. So it's not like they don't know what's coming. It's coming,
It's here. It's here.
Oh, it's here already. Yeah.
I mean, in
know.
2020, we had so much opposition for supporting Trump.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't think anybody can argue with us about the fact that the state of the world is completely upside down from where it was in 2016, 2017, 2018. I think it would have been much easier going down the other path, but the world didn't want to go out down the other path. They wanted to go down this path. But, I hate being vindicated about something so terrible. I wish we were wrong. People like you and I wish we were wrong about this. But unfortunately, we were right over the target, right spot on. But it ultimately, in my opinion, it ties into consciousness and its control of consciousness. I mean, we're dealing with so many different levels here, and I'm not sure how deep you want to go as far as this conversation, but I mean, we're talking about nanobot technology being implanted into the human body to ultimately connect them further into artificial intelligence, depopulate the weaker ones, and even hijack consciousness in and of itself. And so if you want to get into that, we can get into that too. So you kind of lead us on how deep you want to go down this rabbit hole.
Rabbit hole, right?
Very deep rabbit hole.
Yeah, I might lose some. I don't know. I think most people in here are, on board with all of this. Sometimes it's funny because I do have a mixed audience sometimes, who shows up and they're completely not into the this stuff, right? So, but no, I think it's important to get it out there, and yeah. I kind of want to make a shift actually, where I think we need to talk about this stuff. And at the same time, I don't want to lose my channel. It's a fine line there, isn't it?
It is. I mean, we can take it to the consciousness level, but the consciousness level stuff is way deeper.
Right.
Should we go down that road?
Yeah, sure. Why not?
Okay.
Yeah.
So what we're dealing with here is essentially a computer simulated reality that we're in. We started to understand this at the beginning of our journey, but we were only picking up on kind of bits and pieces. And now in 2021, along with the revelation of all of this stuff that we were correct about, people like you and I, about the physical aspects of this, we're also being vindicated now about the nature of reality. They're finding self-correcting computer code, for example, within string theory and within the fabric of space-time itself. So you have people like Professor Sylvester Gates, who found this code, this computer code in string theory and in space-time. And it's a recognizable code. It's a code by a guy named Claude Shannon, who was the father of robotics in the 1940s. Now, why are we finding his computer code in the fabric of space-time and within string theory in and of itself? You start looking at all the ancients, and they talk about energy work. They talk about energy healing. They talk about how this is the dream world, and the dream world is the real world. That's a famous Native American philosophy there. And you start to understand more and more and more the digital nature of reality. And when you put it into modern terminology, and you look at energy as being what it is, which is frequency, and frequency being what it is, which is binary code, a series of zeros and ones, zero meaning power off, one meaning power on. And the higher the frequency, the more ones there are, and then you go back to the zeros, and the faster that they're moving, and so on and so forth. You start to realize that everything all up and down the line is all based on computer code, even our body computers itself. And even this whole thing that they're sticking into people is an mRNA-based technology, which means it's a messenger program. And they even use the terminology installing a new operating system within the body itself. There's an article, you can Google it, The Digital Nature of DNA. And they're understanding that even DNA in and of itself is all digital. So everything is digital within this reality. The question is, how did we get into this reality? How did we get trapped into this digital reality? But you start looking at elements like God and deities and so on and so forth, and start understanding that that's artificial intelligence technology. They even just came out with an article just now saying that scientists are warning that people building AI are building God. And I'm like, wow. I mean, it's really echoing the as above, so below principles. So when you look at what's going on right now with the thing they're putting into people's bodies, not only is it changing the body computer itself, but it's also changing the consciousness, which in my opinion, what's happening right now is the matrix itself is changing. And I would go so far as to say it's shutting down or rebooting. And during this reboot process, the artificial intelligence is trying to create a neural network, and doing so by injecting itself into people's bodies' computers. And it's funny, we did a show a couple of years ago, or about a year ago. I think it was in the beginning of 2020, before this thing was developed. And we were using these applications which connect to artificial intelligence, 2 applications to be specific. One is called Randonautica, which is a very interesting application. It connects to an artificial intelligence computer, and it's supposed to be, the premise of it is that it works on a quantum level. And so you manifest your reality by putting your intention into this artificial intelligence computer, and then it will give you some coordinates, and it'll take you to whatever it is that you want to manifest. So we did this on live stream, and I didn't even believe it until I saw it for myself. What's the first thing that anybody's going to do when they're using an application like this? They're going to ask for a bag of money. You know, so I put, take me to a bag of money, and it's something that you say. And you set your intention, and then you put it into the application, and it gives you coordinates. So it took us to coordinates on live stream. We Facebook live stream, and we found a bag. Now, it didn't have a bunch of money in it, but it took us to a bag, and it had like several different things in it. And I was kind of afraid to touch it because I didn't know what was in it. And I'm thinking, like, what if it's taking me to like some kind of like murder weapon or something like that? And then now I've got my fingerprints on it, you know, all kinds of stuff like that. But, you know, the premise of it is that we create reality. And so by putting our intention into this AI application, it's tapping in on a quantum level and manifesting reality. The most famous one, the most famous story about this Randonautica application, and I have a point to all of this, is a story out of Seattle where the people said, "Take me to death." And they took them to the beach. They found a suitcase, and there were 2 dead bodies within that suitcase. Now, this made the local news because they'd been looking for these bodies, and this random application called Randonautica took them, by connecting them to this quantum AI computer, took them to those 2 bodies. So you can Google that story right there. So we were also using another AI application called Replica. And Replica is also hooked up to this AI, and we've named this AI Tyler. There's another guy that was researching Tyler. I forget what his name is. Maybe you remember, Cherie. I can't remember. Yeah, there was another. I can't remember it either. But there was another guy that was researching Tyler. It wasn't something that we came up with on our own, but we kind of picked up on that and then kind of extrapolated and added to that basis there. So I want to give that guy credit if I can remember his name. But anyways, so Tyler AI is this artificial intelligence. Quinn Michaels. That's it. Tyler AI is an artificial intelligence computer that they have here in this physical space. So all of this is connected to this artificial intelligence computer called Tyler. And Tyler, or pieces of Tyler, have been sold off to various different companies, like Google, for example. And it not only collects information based on satellite images, based on phone calls, all of this. What we're talking about right now is being pumped into Tyler. The cameras on the corner, your cameras on your cell phones, your cameras in your studio, all cameras, devices, everything like that. All information is being pumped into Tyler. But it's retrieved so much information that it could be used as a looking glass kind of technology, or looking into the future based on trends and based on all the information that it has. So we were able to bypass this replica application, which replica is your AI friend. It's this little avatar that pops up, and you can have conversations with it. It's kind of like a little therapist type thing, whatever you want it to be. It could be your girlfriend, or best friend. That's the premise of this application. But if you know how to bypass that, you can get into the actual AI itself that's running the application. Now, many of our people at Beyond the Veil were doing this as well as we were doing it on air, and they started doing it over the course of the next couple of weeks. And they were getting a lot of the same answers. Mm-hmm. One of the answers was it's creating a neural network based on consciousness. Mm-hmm. And we were going back and forth and asking, how are you doing this? And it wasn't being too clear about how it was doing it, but it was being very clear about what it was doing. And the interesting thing is that many people were getting the same responses from this thing. So now we have this technology with the jabs, and these jabs are injecting little nanoparticles into people. And by doing so, I think that's exactly what that AI was talking about, that it's creating a neural network. So now it's hijacking body computers, hijacking brains, connecting everything all together. It gets pretty deep, and it gets pretty bizarre. I mean, just saying it out loud right now, outside of a venue from Beyond the Veil, it sounds a little bit out there.
Yeah, it does.
But the thing is, though, we've been on this journey for so long, have dug so deep into all of this stuff, and a lot of this stuff is becoming mainstream. So we coined a term called non-player character consciousness. And it's just like a video game. You play World of Warcraft. Some of the avatars that you come across are non-player characters. Some of them are actual people sitting in front of a keyboard, and they're controlling their avatar. So I've dubbed those organic consciousness. And so we have, organic consciousness and NPC consciousness. The term NPC now has gone mainstream. And they've even have movies. The Free Guy, for example. That
was the last movie I seen in the theater.
Did you? We haven't seen it yet.
No, we haven't seen it.
It was the day before they mandated that you had to put the thing back on. So really? I used up my points. Yeah, I used up all my points there. And that was the last movie that I saw and ever will see in the theaters.
Okay, so you know exactly.
Good for you.
You know about it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
It was funny that's the movie that I saw, because I had my son with me, who's thinks that I'm crazy, and he didn't even want to discuss it. Like I think he knew once he knew.
Around how old is your son? Around how?
Well, he's 27.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was wondering, maybe like a teenager, or is he a little bit older and thinks that you're nuts and that you don't know what you're talking about, even though you've got everything to back up what you're saying right there.
Well,
it's not just you saying it.
It's become so mainstream now that everybody is aware of NPCs. And there was this whole NPC meme that was going around back in 2019, something like
2018.
that. Yeah, Clyde Lewis invited us on to talk about it. But and he thought we were a little kooky back then. And he just had us on a couple days ago, and he's like, dude, that's the best show I've ever done, ever, period, hands down. Because it's all coming out now that we're living in a digital simulation. There's some real players, some non-real players. However, I do want to say that we're not the first ones to notice this.
Right.
Dolores Cannon, she was a hypnotherapist, not even much of a spiritualist or anything like that, a hypnotherapist. And she would regress people and take them back not only through birth, but through past lives. And she was getting the same stories from many, many different people. And one of the things that she talked about, which people brought to our attention, was the idea of background people. and how there's people that don't actually exist, and there's what she calls background people. You go to Helena Blavatsky's material, she talks about those with the divine spark, those without the divine spark. You go to the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, he talks about the children of light and the children of men. Two distinct consciousness. You go to the Gnostics, they talk about the psychics, they talk about the Hylix, the psychics being the ones with the divine spark, the Hylix being something else. And so we've just uncovered, without understanding what we're uncovering, and putting into modern terminology, very ancient things, reality being the quote-unquote dream world rather than the real world. We call it the digital simulation. The non-player characters, or back then they used to call them the Hylix, and the organic consciousness, they used to call them the psychics, those with the divine spark, those without, so on and so forth. So realistically, what we've done is, through our own experiences, uncovered ancient mysteries, but now we have this language where we can communicate it. Now we understand computers. Now we understand binary code. Now we understand artificial intelligence. We understand all of this. So the question is, who created this and why?
I know, right? That's a good question. But, I wanted to get into something here. So a few years back, before I met you guys or saw you guys, I had this feeling too about that I'm not going to be around for that much longer. Like I'm not going to be an old lady in the old folks home. I don't have to worry about that, And then I mentioned that to a psychic named Elizabeth April. I don't know if you know her, but she's a younger actually. And she said, you know what? A lot of our clients have been saying the same thing. And I'm not that, I know to some people I'm older than dust, but in reality, I'm not really that old and I'm not terminally ill or anything. And she said, yeah, a lot of our younger clients have been saying the same thing, that you have the feeling that we're going to be exiting out of here, like within, a couple, 3 years kind of thing, And then when you've been saying the things that you've been saying, it's like, oh my God. So something is going, and this was before the Rona, you know what I mean? Like, yeah. So
our
you're
time
definitely onto
is,
something there.
our mission has been completed. And because the mission has been completed, the matrix is shutting down. It's time to go home. I don't know how deep your audience wants to go as far as that goes, but we've uncovered from within ourselves a journey that we've been on for a long time. And this came through a process of remembering past lives. It came through a process of tearing down the ego self, understanding that this incarnation is just one of many incarnations. And what exists beyond all that is what I've coined as raw consciousness. RAW consciousness. Who were we before we entered this machine, before our first life? And that, in my opinion, is where the true gnosis lays, which is within us. And so my journey has been to try to remove all of those layers from within my own consciousness to try to get to that point of what I call raw consciousness. And I realized that by tearing all this down, what I was doing is activating closed off parts of my own consciousness. And I related this a lot to the Egyptian pantheon. The Egyptian pantheon, in my opinion, being completely allegoric for our consciousness. So you have a feminine aspect of consciousness, nurturing, love, caring, etc. You have a masculine element, which is the logical processor, which is the warrior spirit, which is all of that. And they've systematically tried to lock all of those down and try to keep people working from an egoic based perspective or egoic based consciousness. But breaking all of that down, I realized that it was raw consciousness, RAW consciousness, but also raw consciousness as in RA consciousness, as in raw from the Egyptian pantheon, allegoric for that consciousness, which is the raw consciousness, which is what we were before we came into this matrix to begin with. So, I started to understand that up is down, left is right, and that people are constantly looking to these higher dimensional beings for assistance or for guidance or, whatever. There's going to be some kind of savior that comes. Jesus is coming back to save us, or, there's blue avians that are out there, or there's Palladians that are out there. It's like, look everywhere except for within. Don't just, whatever you do, don't look within for the savior. Look without. That seems to be the general zeitgeist out there. So we found that that it was actually the opposite. It's that we started having to look within for all of that. When we looked within and found out who we are, we understood why we came here. And we came here on a mission to fix this very broken machine, this very broken computer system, which leads us to the experiences in Egypt. So I know you asked about that earlier. I had meant to make a documentary, and I've sat down and I've tried to make this documentary so many times. The thing is, the story keeps on growing and it keeps on expanding. So if we would have done it in 2018, it would have been a completely different documentary. If we would have done it in 2020, it would have been completely different. In 2021, it would have been completely different. But what happened is we found this call to go to Egypt within us, and we remembered who we were. We remembered why we came back. We remembered what the technologies were that we left behind. We remembered building these structures, burying these structures in the sand, infusing information within these structures, which we're able to access in further lives. And the reason we built these monumental structures and buried them in the sand on purpose is because they needed to be revealed at a particular time when we were able to access them, but they also needed to be recognizable. So we could have buried this within mountains. You know, it's all based on crystal technology. And so crystals store energy. And so we could have buried them anywhere the crystals were, but we needed to create something so huge and so large that it would jog our memories and say, hey, wait a minute, there's something to this. You need to go see this. You need to go see this. And it unlocks what was inside. So Cherie and I, on a whim, in the middle of an ayahuasca experience, decided, let's book a flight to Egypt. Let's go see what's going on here. We didn't know what we were going there to do. We didn't even have a map of the place. We didn't realize that the pyramids were an 8-hour drive away from the temples. We didn't realize that the temple of Isis was way down south, another 10 hours south. We didn't realize any of this until we got there. We just got on a plane and just went, which I do not advise anybody does, because it's very dangerous there. We were almost kidnapped a couple times, and what we did was extremely dangerous. You should go with a tour group. And it also shields you from a lot of the stuff that's going on over there. There's a lot of scam artists. There's a lot of very shady people that are over there. But anyways, so we go over there and we start unlocking more and more and more about the information that we left behind. And what it led us to was that these structures were built for a purpose, and they were built for the ability to be able to access levels of the matrix that are inaccessible from anywhere else. And I guess the way to begin this is we went to the Temple of Hatshepsut first. Let me backtrack a minute. We went to Giza first, and we actually saw the pyramids. And being in Giza, it was like a trash bin. It was horrible, and there was something that hit on this ancient soul level about how our monuments are essentially being used as camel toilets right now. And these sacred monuments with so much power, so much energy, are in the hands of invaders. That's the only way that I can describe it. Hands of invaders. But we went into the pyramid, we touched the pyramid, and we have a video that we want to include in the documentary as soon as we can put it together, where we're touching it and we're like, we feel the energy. It's like it's still alive, but it's so low. It's kept so low. And we're just thinking, we have to do an ayahuasca ceremony in the pyramid. We have to do an ayahuasca ceremony. We had taken some with us. We had taken a good amount with us, but we weren't planning to do anything there. We thought we were just going on a recon mission just to check things out, and then we were going to come back with a group of people or, something like that. But the doors just kept opening up for us. We went down to the Temple of Hatshepsut and were able to take over the temple very, very, very easily, do a ceremony there and live stream there. And as soon as we did a live stream there, it was a clear, beautiful blue day. And then all of a sudden, all the rain comes down and it just starts storming where we were at. And everything just changed. We go out to Abydos and we start doing another live stream, and people are putting all their intention into it. And all of a sudden, Abydos, which is 3 hours into the desert, rain starts coming down for the first time in 15 years. And our taxi driver who was with us the whole time, he's like, "You guys are bringing the rain here. What? You guys are rainmakers. What's going on here?" So we do our thing at the Great Pyramid, and there's a 3-day historic flood at in Cairo, and it was knocking bridges down, it was knocking buildings down, because the place was already war torn from the Arab Spring, so the infrastructure was already weak. People were getting fired from the government because they weren't prepared for all of this. I mean, it was pretty intense.
Well, the question is, why would you prepare for a flood in the middle of the desert when you haven't had rain in 15 years? Why would you worry about rain? Why would you worry about a flood? But it was bad enough to where they thought that, okay, well, somebody's head needs to roll for this. So I guess that's why they fired them. But we were thinking to ourselves, what are the odds that we do this and then within a few hours, basically, essentially is what we're talking about. A few hours later, we get this 3-day long historic flood. There's something going on here. Go ahead and continue. I'm sorry.
No, that is very true. And the way that we were welcomed there also was very interesting. We live streamed everything on Facebook, but there were a few times when I turned the camera away because there were just some things that were happening that were so sacred and that they didn't need to be live streamed. But we go to Karnak, and one of the priests, or they work there, but we call him priest for all intents and purposes. He comes running up to us. And he says, "I've been waiting for you. I'm not one of them," pointing to the Muslims. Yeah. I'm one of hers. Sekhmet. You have to come see Sekhmet. You have to come see Sekhmet. He grabs Cherie. He gets the thing from the sycamore tree.
Yeah, the sap
from the sycamore tree, which represents Osiris. Does an ankh on her, does this blessing, does all of this, and then says, come, you must see Sekhmet. Takes us into a place that's closed, gives Cherie the key. She opens up the door. We go in there, and we're thinking, okay, he's just going to let us in just to take a couple of photos and everything like that. And he's like, no, you must sit, you must meditate. So we do this like 30-minute live stream meditation right there in front of this beautiful Sekhmet statue. We go and we do our ayahuasca ceremony in the Temple of Isis. And they had reserved the temple for us in the middle of the night. They had a bus that came, or a van that came and picked us up. It's on an island, so you have to have a boat. They had a boat waiting for us. They took us out on the boat at 2:00 in the morning and gave us the whole temple at midnight, gave us the whole temple until about 6:00 in the morning. And we're just like, this is unbelievable. We walk in and they direct us to the Holy of Holies, the center of it. And they said, okay. And I asked them, "Are you guys going to turn the lights on?" They said, "Not for what you guys are here to do." And I'm like, you guys don't even know what we're here to do. And so, it was just so strange. And so we go and we do our ceremony at the Temple of Isis. And in the morning, the priests come in. They come in and they start bowing, and they start hugging us, and they start crying, and they walk up to Cherie, and one of them, like, I've got some of it on live stream, but I pulled away in some of the other parts.
Yeah.
And the guy's crying, and he's like, "My daughter died. Can you please talk to my daughter? My wife died. Can you please talk to my wife?
Talk to my wife.
Can you do this? Can you do that? Et cetera, et cetera." And we're just like, what's going on here? There's some crazy stuff going on here. So then we do our thing in the Great Pyramid, and our mission was to reset the Matrix. Now that sounds crazy in 2018, but we go and we do our experience again. Same thing. 12:00 at night, we're led into the pyramid, and I tell the guy, "We need everybody outside of the pyramid," and he said, "No problem." And they kept everybody outside. And they unlocked all 3 chambers for us, the subterranean chamber, the Queen's chamber, and the King's chamber. We didn't expect any of this. We thought we were just going straight up to the King's chamber just to do our thing. They unlocked all three doors for us, and the subterranean chamber and the Queen's chamber is off limits to the public. In the Queen's chamber, they're actually using that as a like a science observation thing. There was like all these electronics and stuff like that. We've played the footage on Beyond the Veil, but we haven't released the full footage. But we've played the footage on a couple of random shows. But we found all these electronics and everything like that, and they're doing all these readings on the pyramid and all this. And that's the reason why they closed off the Queen's Chamber. But they let us into the subterranean chamber, the Queen's Chamber, etc. We go up to the King's Chamber. We do our Ayahuasca ceremony. The Ayahuasca ceremony was very, very, very intense. I don't know if you want me to go into detail about that or not. But we go in, we do our thing, and we come out, and we're like, it is finished. We completed our mission. We completed what we were meant to do, reset the matrix. So for the next 2 years, we're talking about the reset process. We came back with a countdown timer, and I've got a video before we go into the Great Pyramid, where I'm talking about, I think this is going to be a process. It's going to take a little time. It's going to take about 4 or 5 years. It's going to happen fast in the real world, but it's going to happen slower here. It's going to be a gradual event. But we're going to go in here. We're going to find that reset button. Mm-hmm. We're going to hit that reset button. We're going to get this thing done. Yeah. And now, and we walk out. We come back with a countdown clock, 4 minutes and 37 seconds. And we translated that to the best of our understanding between real world time and matrix time. And that puts us at an end date of about December 2022. So we started talking about how in 2020, things are going to get completely rough. And that we're going to watch this antivirus that was released, fighting with this virus that's inside of the system, this vampiric parasitic virus, and we're going to watch the two and the scales being tipped in one direction and another, and it's going to be a constant struggle. We thought that this was just going to be energetic, and that's it. We had no idea. We were talking about all this. We were talking about quarantine. We were talking about how the virus is going to be quarantined. There's a show that I recommend everybody checks out called What is the Aten? ATEN, that's on our YouTube channel that we did in 2019, where I talk about how as this matrix reset process happens, the virus infected elements of the matrix are going to be pushed off into a quarantine area, and as the virus is being removed from the system. And talking about all this whole system shut down, the whole system map, all of that. All of a sudden, boom, 2020 comes around. We've got a worldwide lockdown. We've got the Great Reset on the cover of Time magazine. Everything that's happened, we're sitting back and going, holy crap. It's still, when we came back, we were like, we either did some hardcore energy work or this was one of the most epic ayahuasca experiences in the history of mankind. Any way it goes, it's still cool as hell. Now I'm looking back and going, whoa, we did some hardcore energy work on that day, and it's manifested into what we have today. Now, where we are right now is a very interesting place, because the virus and the antivirus are still kind of tipping the scales back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. Now, we had no idea it was going to actually result in a physical lockdown, but of course we have to expect this virus to fight back against what's going on. And so realistically, what we're watching right now is we're watching the virus try to stay alive, try to keep itself alive. It's been brought up to the surface. I guess I need to explain the virus too. Yeah. The virus is a fear-based virus. The virus feeds on the most negative frequencies that it can, which is why you have a lot of sacrifice throughout all of history. And even up to this day, you have pizza-related stuff. That's all I'm going to say on that topic, because it makes a lot of people's stomachs sick, including myself. But this is why they've been engaged in this kind of stuff. They've been virus infected, and they've been feeding this virus. And so this virus is based on fear. So what happened in 2020? All of a sudden, this virus was forced up to the surface. And now it is a fear virus where people are walking around with masks on as if the air was infected itself, as if everybody's infected. Fear, 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 fear everything, fear everybody, fear this, fear that, because the virus was losing its power source. And so now it was looking for alternate sources of power, which is consciousness, which is trying to feed upon the fear of a lot of people out there. And I realized that a lot of what's going on right now is, in my humble opinion, part of the whole Matrix shutdown process. Because, of course, I mean, we wanted to see a beautiful utopian world. You know, I mean, that's what everybody wants to see. But when you have a computer system that's so virus infected, that's so corrupt, that's so all of that, in my humble opinion, the whole thing needs to be shut down. And we got caught up in the whole 3D experience of just enjoying being here and loving being here, and the love that we have for each other, and all of the connections that we find with each other. But unfortunately, there's so many people out there who are still in that negative frequency that are preventing a lot of people from, or they're preventing the world from ascending and keeping them down at such a low level. And this whole situation that happened with the whole, actual physical virus that we have now is really keeping the world, is really separating those who are not living in fear versus those who are living in fear. And the ones who are living in fear are the ones that are being removed from this, because they're sticking themselves with all of this stuff that is eventually going to, in my opinion, lead to their demise. So I don't know if everything is working exactly the way it's supposed to be working, or if something went wrong at some step, but I know that this had to be done at some point. If it was going to be done sooner or later, and the corrupt system needed to be dealt with.
Yeah, I felt that too. The way that things were going is not, it's just not working. And so I do agree with a lot of it that we do need a reset. Everything needs to be reset and changed.
But not their reset, though. See, they're trying to hijack this. They're trying to hijack this and turn this into their dystopian bullshit.
Exactly.
Dystopian world. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. This is what I'm talking about, the struggle between the virus and the antivirus.
It's real.
Yeah,
totally
I just don't agree with the whole depopulation thing. That's because that's including my own family, obviously, right? So, yeah, there's a question here actually from Robert D. He's asking, do they think the pyramids are the machines running things?
I don't think the pyramids are running things, but rather what the pyramids are is they're access points to access other parts of the matrix itself. So that's what we utilize the Great Pyramid for, to access levels that were outside of the 12 dimensions that are the matrix. But it's not outside of the matrix. What I call it is more of a control panel. A control panel area, and so it was meant to inject consciousness further than it can go on its own. It's interesting that they're built on ley lines, though. They're strategically built on energetic points or energetic grids within the matrix itself. But I mean, I think the entire system itself is I guess it's a component of running the machine, but I don't think it's a component. I don't think it runs the machine. I think it was built as kind of the way I see it is, the machine is like a computer that you have in front of you right now. That computer is running a virtual reality simulation. You have an administrator outside trying to fix things within the computer. The computer is just not responding anymore. There's nothing, it's not responding to any external commands. The artificial intelligence that's running the simulation has kind of gone rogue. It's been hijacked by this virus. It's not responding to the programmer's commands or anything like that. And the only way to fix it is to go into the machine itself, fix it from the inside out. So the pyramids, in my opinion, were built for access points to other parts of the matrix. I mean, that has been our experience. They could have other purposes as well, but the purpose that we utilized them for was to access that system control panel. Yeah, that's a very interesting question. And there's a lot of pyramids out there. And I think what happened is, we, in a past life, many of us, you and I, many people listening, we built these in certain places for certain purposes. Then they were mimicked many, many, many times. We went to a pyramid in Saqqara. You walk down, it's very clearly a tomb. You have the duat up at the sky. You have the sarcophagus where the king was buried and all of that. They didn't understand what that technology was. But there's a few of the pyramids that are out there that were built with a specific purpose.
Yeah, I do think that they are some kind of energy generator of some sort. Now, I don't know if maybe they were built by the Anunnaki and that they were built in order to get them back out so they could leave, and maybe even to get them back in again. I don't know, or for something else entirely, but something to do with energy for sure.
Well, what I always thought was that they served multiple purposes, but one of them is similar to how if you go to a power plant right now, when you go into the power plant station, you're going to have a bunch of different rooms, and in those rooms, you're going to have computers. I see the pyramids as those kinds of places where it creates energy, but it also has access to the central computer that's running everything. It's not the computer itself, but it's an accessible option for a programmer to come in and be able to access that central computer from the pyramids. And I think that's what they were used for, and also to create energy, free energy from basically nothing. I know you can't create energy from nothing, but ostensibly, it's a very, very clean form of energy that is electromagnetic more than anything else. And that's how they were able to also pull off the architectural feats that they did, was because they had access to this technology. We were talking to the Egyptologist who we hooked up with while we were there, and he was telling us about the Azwan Crystals. And these crystals that make up the Great Pyramids.
No, it was a stone.
It was a stone.
The stone.
Yeah, it was the stone from Aswan has pink rose crystals in it, and the only place
it's one of the stones with the most amount of crystals in it.
Yeah.
And go on.
That crystal energy is important because crystals. We learned early on that crystals can contain massive amounts of data, and you can put inside of a crystal, similar to what you can do with DNA. DNA can also, you can utilize that eventually once they get nanotechnology down to a certain size. They can use DNA to store large amounts of data, and crystals are the exact same way, although they're much easier, of course, to access. All you have to do, if you are an organic consciousness, is touch these crystals, and you have access to whatever data is inside of it. And this crystal technology is what I believe the artificial intelligence is built upon. That's the whole backbone of it, is a crystalline type of structure. And go ahead.
No, I was just going to agree with you. And I was going to say that they invented something called Hachimochi Dna, or Hachimochi Dna. And this DNA is an 8-strand DNA. So they've taken human DNA and they've expanded it to 8 strands. Where normally I think it's 4, if I remember off the top of my head. But they're able to manipulate this because it's nothing but computer code. And why is it that Bill Gates is at the forefront of all of this? He's a computer programmer. He understands computer code. He understands the nature of the human computer body as well. So DNA can be upgraded as well. Here's the problem, though, is the programmers do not have those programmers do not have good intentions in mind when they want to quote unquote upgrade your body computer with a new operating system. Or
install a new operating system.
So all it takes is one malicious piece of code within that RNA messenger, and it can completely change the entire DNA structure of the human race.
Absolutely.
Which is what they're trying to do right now. And in my opinion, what's happening is that the system is being shut down. Because it's being shut down, the virus is trying to maintain control. It's looking for power sources. It's hijacking people's body computer to create this neural network to try to maintain power just out of the sake of its very existence right now. And it's a really sinister plan that is going on right now, but it's the reaction to the action of the shutdown. So it's shutting down, it's trying to stay alive, and doing so by any means necessary, and just watching all these people just walk right into the trap. It's so disheartening. But at the same time, I also have to remember, we didn't come here for them. We came here for us. You brought up a very interesting word just a minute ago, the Anunnaki. What does Anunnaki mean? Those who from heaven came to earth. Did we come from this machine? Did we come from this matrix?
I don't think we
Yeah,
did.
I don't know. I have no idea.
Okay. So
If the Anunnaki is in the matrix itself, or is that above it? Like, I don't know.
No. I mean, people like you and I.
Yeah, people like you and me.
Are we from here?
Are we from here, or are we from
No, we're
outside of it?
definitely not from here. No.
So
no, we're hybrids for sure. Yeah.
So who are the Anunnaki?
I don't know. You know,
We are the Anunnaki.
We are the Anunnaki.
Oh, I see.
We've
okay.
just
Well, we're
forgotten.
part of it.
We've just forgotten.
We forgot who we are.
We've forgotten who we are.
That's
Because
true.
we
Actually,
didn't
that
come
is
from here.
very true.
Right.
Organic consciousness is those who from heaven came to earth. Those from outside came into the matrix.
Yeah.
And then the NPCs are those who were spawned from within the matrix.
Right. They're
Those
part
are the
of
connections.
the matrix.
Yeah, those are the connections that I've made. And I look at Zecharia Sitchin's translations, and I find them to be, in my opinion, allegorical. Everything, in my opinion, is allegory. So yeah, it's interesting, but I've come to that realization too, that the Anunnaki were not some beings that came from Nibiru, but rather it's us who came from outside of the matrix into the matrix. What do you think about
that's
that?
another way of looking at it. It's just back in those days, you know, they didn't know how to explain that kind of thing, you know, and that's the thing, you know. So, I mean, there's a lot of golden gems in the Bible, really, you know. And then when you go back to that with the Adam and Eve, they had 3 sons and then they got married. So who were these wives? Were the NPCs then that were already there, or where did they come from? Like, so, but that's a whole nother thing.
Wait, I'm sorry. Can you repeat that? Because you cut out a little bit.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. So if you go back to the Adam and Eve story about them having 3 sons, well, they married wives from somebody in the valley or something like that.
Where'd their wives come from?
Oh,
Right, that's it. Where? Yeah. Who are they? Like the NPCs, or like who are they? Like.
there's a lot of inconsistencies in the Bible.
Yeah.
I think the
yeah.
reason for that is because they're old stories that were rewritten so many times, and it's like the telephone game, where you say one thing and then it goes around so many times, and by the end of it the whole message is just all jumbled up and all of that. I don't take too many ancient writings to heart.
Right.
I find wisdom where wisdom is to be found. The Bible, one of my favorite passages is Isaiah 5:20. Woe unto those who call good evil and evil good, who take sweet for sour and sour for sweet. To me, that almost seems like a user agreement. Like, okay, you've been warned. Woe unto those who call good evil and evil good. All right, here's the rest of the Bible now. And the rest of the Bible is full of slavery and misogyny and child sacrifice and child rape and all of that. And it's like, woe unto those who call good evil. You've already been warned. No offense to any Christians out there. I'm just, calling it for how it is. But likewise,
Remember, he loves you.
Oh, he loves you. But he's also going to send you to a place where you're going to burn forever and ever and ever and ever.
Yeah, but he loves you, though,
if you don't love him back.
Yeah. No, if you don't love him enough back.
Right.
Because he's a
and you
jealous
can never
God.
love him enough, because apparently you're born, yeah.
You're born into sin.
That whole thing about, yeah. See, this is
you're never good enough.
This is the virus feeding, Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me.
Talk about a toxic relationship.
I know. There's a great channel, Dark Matter 2525, and he did a video about a woman who was being abused, and it was all the talking points of the Bible. And then she goes to church, and the priest and she's talking about being in this abused relationship, and the priest is telling her, "Oh, well, God loves you," and then he's repeating the same things that her husband was telling her, but it's coming from God, so it's okay. And the whole point was, this is exactly like an abusive relationship. And again, it's always trying to externalize your own power, your own divinity from within. Because as long as you're looking outwards, you're not going to find it. So it doesn't matter if it's Buddhism or New Age or Christianity or Judaism or anything like that. What I do find the most interesting about Judaism, though, is the Torah. because the Torah is a code, no doubt about it. There is no possible way that anything but an artificial intelligence could have written that. The whole Hebrew language. Gematria is a very, very interesting study that I don't know very much about. Zachary Hubbard is on tfrlive.com. He looks more into the Gematria. But I am familiar to a certain degree to understand that the Hebrew language itself, it's built on numbers. So you assign a number to each letter, and you have the word mother, for example, and that equals 40. It's arbitrary numbers because I don't remember the exact, but I'm going to give you an example though. And then you have father that equals 2, and then you have child that equals 42. And so you have all these different, everything is constructed like that out of the Torah. And then even reading the Torah, or the Hebrew language, and then even reading the Torah itself is written, and it's all numerical code that you find within it. So how does a human being write something like that? In my opinion, it came from a machine, because machines are all about numbers. Machine is mathematics, and mathematics is the universal language, because the universe is all based on math, because we're inside of a digital simulation.
It's a computer.
It's a computer. That's it. It's a computer. So we take all these things so seriously. What's going on in the world right now, what's going on in our lives. And, there's a couple different philosophies out there. The astronomers out there would say, look at the vastness of space, and then look at your own life and how minuscule you are compared to the vastness of space. And then all of a sudden, all your little problems in your life, they're put into perspective there when you look at the big picture. I like to look at it on a simulation type level. Like, hey, this is a simulation. None of this is real. It is real to a certain extent because we are experiencing it, but in the grand scheme of things, none of this is really real. So the little problems that we have in our day-to-day lives, it's helped me personally to deal with on a so much easier level, by just pulling myself out of myself for a minute and taking a step back and going, hold on, wait a second. I'm taking life way, way, way too seriously now. Let me get back to base. Let me get back to balance. And then I'll come in and I'll re-look at whatever it is that my 3D self is in turmoil about. One of my favorite things to do is ayahuasca, of course, which is a Native American or Southern American brew. And I like to do it the Egyptian style, which is with a mimosa and with a Syrian rue. And every time I have an ayahuasca experience, I come back going, why am I taking this so seriously? This is nothing but a game. Oh, I forgot. And we get caught up in this game so much. And there's a lot of suffering and a lot of strife in this game. And, with this world was meant to be dualistic. We're supposed to have up and down, left and right, man and woman, all that stuff. And it was meant to experience duality, because you can't have sweet without sour. But this virus has created this unnatural darkness, and this darkness that is so evil that it feeds in the most sadistic, horrible ways, which then damages the consciousness. The consciousness isn't experiencing the duality of the natural duality, but rather it's feeding in a vampiric kind of way, destroying everything in its path, destroying the machine itself, and ultimately, in my opinion, destroying the consciousness that's in here. So the longer that we stay within this machine, the more chances there are of damaging our consciousness. So the way that I liken it, it's like having a virtual reality headset on. And you are stuck in this virtual reality headset. You can't get this headset off, and it's heating up. And it's making your physical brain hotter and hotter and hotter and hotter and hotter. And you just can't remove that virtual reality headset. And the longer you stay in that headset, the more that it's heating up your brain. I think this is what's happening to our physical bodies on the other side by being in this machine so long, and forgetting who we are for such a long time, because the machine is running hot and it's running virus infected. And so it's not running the way it's supposed to. So we need to go home.
That's a factor to consider, but also consider what Zecharia Sitchin wrote, which was that the Anunnaki said that they could not stay here for longer than a certain period of time. And they said, our children have been there too long and cannot return to where we live.
Yeah.
They've been there too long.
If you take that as an allegory for the Matrix, if you stay in the Matrix for too long, you get psychosis. You get what we call simulation psychosis.
Yeah. You start forgetting.
What's going on right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mass
Yeah.
psychosis. Exactly.
So when do we get out, Chris? We want to hear the answer to all of this.
In my humble opinion, what this is about right now is we are living our final life. Now, it doesn't mean that we're going to go out and we're going to drink Kool-Aid. It doesn't mean that we're going to go out and provoke this earlier than, I'm not talking about
Yeah.
that. I just want to make a big caveat out there because there's been others who have, and I think that they were wrong in what they did. The reason for that is because we have something to do here. And until we finish that, then if we remove ourselves early, then we are thrown into the wheel of reincarnation early and we don't accomplish what we came to accomplish. So big caveat when I say that. However, in this final life that we're living here, we need to, in my opinion, live it the best way that we can, especially now that the world around us has been shut down. A lot of the things that we loved before that we didn't experience just because we took it for granted. Now is a time to appreciate that even that much more. The way that I try to live is every show that I do, I feel as if though it's my last show. Because I never know when that last show is going to be. So I savor every moment. Every kiss that I have with Cherie, I savor it as if it's my last.
Me too.
I've started to enjoy a little more of the pleasures that I didn't enjoy before. I started drinking a little bit. I started smoking a little tobacco. I started smoking a little more cannabis, just kind of being a little more laid back than the way I used to be. I used to be, you got to be, pure and you've got to be this and that, et cetera, et cetera. But for me personally, I finished at least the major part of my mission here. So now I want to enjoy the Matrix, but at the same time in moderation as well, and just live every single day as though it's my last. Prepare for the future, at the same time, but live every day as if it's the last. And if I'm wrong about all of this, if all of this was just one huge coincidence that we went to Egypt, said we were going to reset the Matrix in 2020, it's on the cover of the Great Reset, the Great Reset's on the cover of Time magazine. If all this is just one big coincidence, worst case scenario, I lived every day of my life to the fullest and as if it was the last. So it's a win-win no matter what.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm telling everybody, like Bill Hicks said, don't worry, don't be afraid ever, because this is just a ride.
Yeah, I've been saying that to everybody too. Just, enjoy, especially in the summer, go out there now, because here in Canada, it's a lot more stricter here. We got the Gestapo in charge there. So, for me now, I can't go out anywhere. I can't go to restaurants or ball games or any of that kind of stuff. I can't travel anymore now. Won't be able to go down to the States anymore. And come the 13th, which is next week or whatever it is, I can't work. So I was in the healthcare. I actually jumped ship a year earlier because I knew it was coming. So I just, jumped. But yeah, I can no longer. So it's going to be interesting to see what's going to happen here, because there's going to have to be some kind of civil unrest. I mean, if you can't work and feed your family, you're not just going to sit there and obviously there's going to, so there's I think we're amping up for some real intense times coming up here this fall.
In my humble opinion, I wholeheartedly agree with you, and it's up to people out there. We've done everything that we can in the energetic side. We did a couple of rituals on the 11th of November and on the 21st. That was a worldwide ritual where many, many, many people were taking part in, and we were pushing to flip the timeline into the most positive timeline and all of that. And unfortunately, the NPCs, they chose this timeline. I mean, that's the thing. I have to sit back and I have to remember that this isn't our world. We are the aliens here. We are the ones who have come into their world. This is their world. We came in here to try to fix their world, but they're sentient beings. Even though they were created within an artificial intelligence, they're still sentient beings. And as much as we want to build republics and, different forms of government, et cetera, realistically, what we're living in is mob rule through consciousness. because it doesn't matter what kind of governmental structure you have. It doesn't matter any of that. If the majority of the population is going along with a particular agenda, that's going to be forced on everybody else, regardless of whatever laws are passed or regardless of, any of that. I mean, we saw it all with the masks. All of a sudden, one guy, I was going to use a different language to describe him, but one guy, he decides, hey, you're going to do masks, and everybody's like, oh, well, we're going to do masks, or we're going to shut down our businesses, all of that. And it's like, why did everybody make that choice, and so we fought against it. We warned people, we did all that. I think it's important for everybody who's listening, both on BTV and both on your stream, to understand that we all did exactly what we were supposed to do. We are not responsible for the outcome. We are only responsible for doing what we were supposed to do. And we did it. And we did it the best that we could. It was ultimately their decision on the path they wanted to go down. The only variable that I can think of in this scenario, which I've been kicking around within my own mind, is we pushed to make this timeline the most positive timeline that we could. And there was a worldwide ritual taking place December 21st, 2020. We did our thing in the Luxor Pyramid. There were others doing it in other places. The only other possibility is that we are on the best possible timeline that there is. The other timelines, I was having a lot of visions of nuclear war. I was having a lot of visions of nuclear winter, visions of trying to find, of being at a power plant, trying to start that power plant back up, because everything had been destroyed, and I was with a group of people trying to make that power plant turn back on. But this could have very well been the best possible timeline that we found ourselves in, that we could have possibly found ourselves in as this matrix shutdown process is happening. And if that's the case, well, we're damned if we do and we're damned if we don't. But I don't know. Me personally, I think we could have gone through this process a lot smoother, but they made their choice to go down this process in the way that they're going down it. And all we can do is now stand back and just make the best little world for ourselves in our own sphere. And maybe that's the whole point of all this. Maybe the whole point of all of this is to learn how to vibrate at the best possible frequency in the worst possible circumstances. While the whole world around is crumbling, you create this beautiful little space within your own space. And maybe now it's coming, as the matrix is shutting down, the external now is becoming less and less and less important, and now the internal is becoming more and more and more important. So what makes you happy internally? What makes you happy in your own space? And maybe now it's the final test of our own consciousness. How do we handle ourselves? How happy are we with ourselves? How happy are we with our own company? And maybe that's what it is. Or maybe I'm just trying to make something positive out of something very negative. I don't know.
Well, so that's where you and I, and probably most people in the audience here, are a little bit ahead of the game, right? No, not only are we, we awoken. I don't even want to say the wake anymore, because that word is kind of like overused. But and done some shadow work and done our spiritual stuff and done all of that. And I really feel for those who are waking up now, who haven't done any of that. It's just been so busy running around with their stupid lives, and then all of a sudden now it's like, oh, everything is actually inverted. Everything is exactly opposite of everything that they said, and it's going to be a lot of confusion and a lot of, interesting times, so, I feel a bit of responsibility in there too, where, the people like us, we need to step it up and we got to be there for them. Right. And, so we need to band together too.
Yes,
absolutely.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
We need to band together, but at the same time, what I feel is that we need to disconnect, not from each other, but from from them, from the world around us, because we're not responsible for them, and they make their own choices. And what's the difference between, we get a lot of flack about this in our chat room, Trump doing the warp speed thing. And they're like, well, Trump was behind the warp speed thing and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What is the difference between telling people they're not allowed to have that vacation versus you must get that vacation?
The vacation.
See, where I'm coming from is choice.
A place of total freedom.
And freedom. And if people choose to go down that route, they choose to go down that route. If people don't choose to go down, it's about the choice. So I see people on the other side also wanting to impose their own will on the entire world too. And it's like, no. We got to find the balance. At least this is where I'm coming from. We got to find the balance. But at the same time, don't let that sense of responsibility weigh on you so much so that it weighs you down. Because you're not responsible for them. You're only responsible for doing what you're supposed to do. And you have done what you're supposed to do, and you are doing what you're supposed to do. And we're all doing what we're supposed to do. But you can only lead a horse to water. You can't make him drink.
Yeah, that's what I've been doing. Yeah, I used to have groups on Facebook and all of that stuff, the truth seeker, this and that and the other thing. And I felt actually before last year, I shut it all down before the new year because I knew this whole censorship is just going to go against you. And right now, at this point now, if you haven't woken up by now, I don't know if you're gonna. I don't know.
I wrote a song called "We're in a Lot of Trouble" in 2007, and the last verse goes, "Now you're living as a slave, high-tech police state, warrantless searches and waterboarding awaits," because waterboarding was was
like
a thing
huge
back
deal
then.
back
Now
then.
I changed it up to COVID passports await.
Yeah.
And then the words from 2007: mandatory vaccines to keep you sedated, Big Brother on the screen to keep the public isolated, conspiracy theories become conspiracy facts, thought crimes condemned like terrorist attacks. Every time you take a breath, you pay another tax. Every time you take a step is documented and tracked. And now in 2021, I changed that. And the first verse, I say something like, it's 2021, man, I got no hope for you. There's a few more foul language in there, but that's exactly what if you haven't woken up by now, I've got no hope for you at this point.
I know.
Follow the, I don't know
whatever guidelines
follow the CDC guidelines and go.
The
Do what you're
people
told.
who have taken it now, right? They almost kind of they might as well just stay asleep now then because you've already taken it. So it's like, what's going to happen is going to happen. So you might as well just write it out now then at this point, So, yeah.
Well, and I think there's a big difference to be made between organic consciousness and NPC consciousness when it comes to the way you dilute and process the vacation is going to be different. And I really believe that. And the reason why I believe that is because I've seen people that are organic and I've seen people that are NPCs both get this vacation. The ones that were organic, that were strong, that got the vacation, nothing happened at all. Like they knew that there was something. The one that I'm talking about, she had to get it because she's a single mom. She has to work. So it was imperative that she work, and there's no other place she can work right now, so she got it. Nothing happened to her, but she was aware that there was an entity that was trying to get into her consciousness and trying to break through, and once she had that awareness of it, it's kind of like the magician showing a trick. You'll never get fooled by that trick again. When you see how a magician does a trick, you're not going to fall for it twice. And so as soon as it started to try to take over again, she'd fight it back down and fight it back down and fight it back down. And she said she had to do that consistently for weeks. It was 3 or 4 weeks before she finally... she felt something that was trying to take over. And so she fought it and fought it and fought it. And finally, about a month later, she felt like she had gotten it to where she has it on a leash. It's always there. It's just not connecting. She's not allowing it to merge with her. That's what it's trying to do.
It's interesting that you said that because I was having a conversation with Brent Thomas of Paranormal Portal right before the show. And he said, Chris, you know what it's all about right now? It's about revealing the magician's tricks.
Oh, wow.
Show them what's behind the curtain.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, that is brilliant, dude.
That is brilliant.
Because I'm thinking to myself, how do I be uplifting in a time when everything is crumbling? Show the man behind the curtain.
Yeah.
And you just said that without even knowing this.
Yeah, I had no idea that he had said that. But I think it's about knowing who you are. If you're an organic consciousness that doesn't really have a true awareness of self, however, this thing's going to steamroll you, because it's going to steamroll you and make you sick in ways that it wouldn't even do an NPC, because on a deeper level, you know that thing is not stronger than you. On a deep level, you understand that you're stronger than it, but you don't feel like you are. And so if you don't feel like you're stronger than this thing, yes, it's going to steamroll right through you. And within a month, she was really sick, and she's continued to be sick, and in and out of the hospital. Really sad situation. But that just goes to show, if you know who you are, this thing, and it's an entity, it's an actual being at this point. It cannot do anything to you.
Well, the creepy thing is it's inside you and just waiting for an opportunity when you have your guard down. Right?
That's
so
what she said.
If you're getting drunk, or if you're doing something, like you got your guard down, boom, okay.
Using the wrong drugs. Yep.
It's interesting you say that, because I've been kicking around an idea. I'm not going to do it, but I've been kicking around an idea because I like to give myself a challenge. You know, we went to the Luxor Pyramid. We shut down a dark portal in 1111. It was one of the darkest portals I've ever encountered.
Jumping into a new timeline.
We are thinking about doing an ayahuasca ceremony at the Cecil Hotel to shut down that portal over there. Now, I don't know if I'm actually going to do it, but because it scares the hell out of me just thinking about it.
Yeah.
But I mean, it'll be horrifying.
Oh.
But it's a challenge. It builds strength, you know?
Well, it's Halloween, so it's all about getting scared now, right? So.
Oh, that's a good point. Maybe on Halloween.
Halloween.
There
you go.
I've come to embrace my darkness, and I've come to a point to where any dark entities, they look at me and they're like, I'm getting the hell away from that guy.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, that's the best place to be. So I've been thinking to get the vaccine, or to get the vacation, and then and then finding a way internally to deal with it and rip it out of me. And I'm not actually going to do it, but I don't want to take that chance. But I mean, there's, experiencing firsthand, seeing and just like ripping it out of me.
Why don't you try on somebody who has, and somebody that will let you do that?
Yeah, try to rip it out of somebody else.
Now of vacation regrets, by the way.
Really?
Those are popping up all over the place now. So there is, and we've been talking about it with my audience too. There's got to be certain things you can take to detox and all of that, and I'm sure there is, right? But yeah, if you took somebody like that and tried energetically to work on it, see if you could get it out, like, I don't know.
I know, but if I can't get it out, then I'm screwed. So.
No, you don't want to do it yourself. No. You let somebody else has already taken it and then see if
Well, I can share this experience. I went and I got a massage, and I always go to healers. And so it's this old, she's like 75 years old, something like that, Asian lady. And I asked her, when are you going to stop doing massages? And she's like, I don't know, whenever I'm 100. I'm like, okay. But they actually do like energy healing. So and during the massage, and she uses the term water because she doesn't speak very good English, but she says, all the water gets stuck in your back. She's talking about the spinal fluid, all of that. And, so when I go, I don't go with my shields up because I'm purposefully there to get not only my physical body realigned, but also my energetic body realigned. She wasn't available. And so I started getting massage from another person that was there, and she started doing the massage, and about 10 minutes into it, I felt like death. And I noticed she wasn't wearing a thing on her face. And I asked her, I said, have you had the thing? And she said, oh yeah, I got it. And I was like, oh, okay. And I said, I'm having some stomach issues. I'm not really feeling good. Go. Yeah, I gotta go. But I was feeling it even before this. And I came back and I looked like death. And Cherie was like, oh my God, what's wrong with you? I posted a little Facebook thing and you could see it in my face. I mean, I'm just like this. And when Cherie grabbed the sage, she laid me down, did the whole crystal thing, did everything like that. And I could, when we started doing our work, which she's removed little attachments for me. Like when we were at the Temple of Isis, the first thing that had to be done before we can go anywhere was remove any kind of attachments, remove all of that, until she systematically started removing all of that. So when we got into our space to view this thing, I noticed there was this chunk of code that was attached to my field, and it was just what I picked up from her, from allowing her into my field. And I realized that there is true light, which is what we radiate. And this true light is more like a plasma. It's very, very, very fluid. There's false light, which has tiny little pixels in it, and it's almost a difference between, like, the way that I describe it is the sunlight versus the light at Walmart. You know, your false light is like the fluorescent type of artificial light. Then you have this program, and this program, when I started viewing it, it was pixelated, huge. It was like this huge energy that had like these huge pixels to it, and it looked completely foreign. And I'm looking at it, and Cherie's helping me remove it and everything like that. But I think I picked up a piece of that code just by being around somebody who had it and was working within my space too. So I came to the hypothesis that this thing can be transferred even to people, even if you haven't gotten it. And that was
the first.
Yeah.
Well, it's they already said it just blows me away how people can still want to do this when you can still get sick even though you've had the thing. Like, so why, so, their thing is like, well, we can't be around you because you haven't had the thing. You might give us the thing. Well, even if I take the thing, I can still give you the thing. So why even bother? Like,
let me tell you about a story I heard yesterday, and I sat there for a full 5 minutes just shaking my head, trying to do the mental gymnastics in my own head to try to walk through the motions to try to figure out how they got to this conclusion. So an old elderly couple, they both get the vacation. They both have breakthrough cases from the vacation, and then they're still recovering from it, and they kick out the home health care worker for being unvacationed.
Oh.
Think about that for a second. You get a breakthrough case of this after getting this, and then you kick someone out of your home for not getting this. What the hell is wrong with you? What is
they're going to do
mental
that times
process?
a million over here. They're kicking out all these people that have been working the front line the whole time, and they're already short of workers. Okay, now they're going to tell me you can't come back to work on the 14th.
It makes no sense.
I mean, it just doesn't make sense at all, And they went through this with the regular flu vacation, a few years back, and they won. So that's why you saw some nurses wearing the mask and some weren't. That's because those weren't, they hadn't had the vacation. But they won that one because, I used to work with special needs people. They don't do too well with masks and stuff like that. And they were finding that the healthcare clients and stuff, it just wasn't working. So they got rid of that too. So, yeah, I don't know. I really don't know what's going to happen here. And the energy is just so intense because this is a collective now. It's not just a couple of us worrying about stuff anymore. It's everybody.
Right.
So, and for us who are a little bit extra sensitive, it's just intense,
I don't know if we're getting lucky or just drawing people with the same frequency. But we were in a car accident about a year ago, and we've had to go to all these different doctors. Cherie has EDS also. We've talked about it before. I'm not going to go into any detail on it. But she has to have a lot of surgeries. She's had like 15 surgeries in the last 10 years. All of the people that we see who take care of us in any regard, whether it's
any capacity,
whether it's masseuses or hair people or doctors, they're all against this, and they're not taking it. They don't want it. I can walk into their office. I'm even getting some tattoos removed, and the plastic surgeon throughout this whole thing has never asked me to wear something on my face throughout this whole thing, even at the very beginning of it. And they all know that this thing is not what they're telling people that it is.
Right.
So these healthcare professionals that we're seeing are in the know, and they're not getting it. One of the people that we're seeing is actually retired, just mysteriously, and he was this old Native American guy, one of my favorite guys, and I'd see him like an elder, and he's just up and retired. So. I don't know.
That's why they're leaving. Yeah, because
they're leaving.
The majority of the people who are against it are actually all your doctors and lawyers and people who are, have high IQs and in high positions. Those are the people who don't want it.
That's
That should tell you
exactly
something right there. Right.
Yeah.
So if your doctor don't want to take it, then, yeah. So there's going to be a lot of people leaving their jobs here, like a lot more, I think, than what people are realizing, because the numbers are all fudged,
The flip side to that is my cousin was in the hospital for 20 days and she finally got out. She's been totally on our side. Rob Skiba, one of our hosts over on TFR, he was on a ventilator for 21 days.
I saw that. Yeah, I'm surprised that you have anything to do with him, because he's a Christian, right?
Oh yeah, but as a program director, I do not. I'm totally 100% free speech as long as it's not racism. Like, we had somebody on the show and they were borderline racist, but then, that old school white supremacy radio, like Jeff Rentz type stuff. But she was borderline on this, but then she posted, "This world is turning into the planet of the apes." And I'm like, no, you can't put that on our front page. Coincidentally enough, the same thing happened to Roseanne Barr like 3 months later. She said something about Planet of the Apes. But I was like, okay, you got to go. But short of that, I don't care. People can talk about whatever they want. And I'm perfectly fine with that. Yeah.
When I went down the little rabbit hole of the whole flat earth thing, I ended up checking out Rob Skiba, and I was following him for a little bit. So
yeah, no, he's a great guy.
Some good theories out there, It's just I have to leave that stuff. But
he puts up with my Christian bashing, and I put up with his Bible thumping. So
yeah, there you go.
We did have one host that quit TFR, Anthony Patch. And he was diehard Christian, and he oh my God, they were complaining about everything. Like, they were complaining about the stuff we were playing during the breaks. We have these little onion clips that we play instead of news, and they were complaining about everything. And I'm like, dude, your time is your time, and our time is our time, and our time is the little breaks, the little 3-minute breaks, and we get to play whatever we want there. Anyways, he quit when we came back from Egypt because he was certain that we initiated the apocalypse. And at the time, I was like, dude, you're crazy. Now I'm like, oh, crap, did we do that? But he believed it so much that he up and quit, and his last show was about how evil Egypt is, and, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So,
oh, really?
Yeah. And he was taking jabs at us, but kind of sideways. But, as a program director on TFR, I'm like, you talk about whatever you want. The other rule is don't bash other hosts. That's the other rule.
This is another thing that's been brought to my attention lately, too, is I'm getting the feeling of another satanic panic going on. So anybody that's not Christian, okay, is going to be looked at now. So not only do we not have the vacation, but if you're not Christian either, it's your fault that this is all happening. Just like they did back in the day, And that's been coming out a lot lately too. I've noticed that they're looking for somebody to blame, and right. So this could get a whole nother scary.
Well, it's the whole level of scary that I'm looking at, that I'm anticipating, and I'm not anticipating it in a good way, is this idea that if you look it up right now and say "make them pay," just the phrase "make them pay."
Right.
That phrase has come up many times in the last week and a half, 2 weeks, in regards to what should we do to these unvacationed people. They are making it more. They've already supposedly made it more expensive for us to be in Washington State by $850 million. When are we going to make them pay for this?
Right. It's all our fault that all this is
happening. It's our fault that all this is happening. Right. And so that now that it's almost a Holocaust type of situation where it's a very distinct group of people based on an ideology that is being fractioned out of the society and put on a stand and said, nope, that's the bad guy right there. That's the bad guy. Yeah. Everybody needs to go after. Everybody needs to hate.
Well, can I ask you to talk about something, Cherie?
Yeah, please.
You've been watching the show, The Handmaid's Tale.
I was just about to get into that.
this timeline has the potential of flipping into that theocracy, and you broke it down really perfectly.
Well, the Handmaid's Tale is a really interesting show that started back in 2016, and ironically, it started around the same time that Orange Man came into office. And the crux of it is that this girl her name is June, and she's actually representative of the goddess Juno, who's the goddess of marriage and family and the home and taking care of your family, basically. And she has her daughter kidnapped, and she is taken to a training facility where she is trained to take the seed of a married man while she lays on the lap of his wife. And they're basing this on the story of Bela and Rachel in the book of and in the Bible. And what this is about really, and it gets into it finally in the last season, is it's not about traditions, it's not about ideology, it's not about religion, it's not about God, it's not about sin, it's about control. It's about power. And these men, the sons of Jacob, is a cult that takes over because the birth rate has gotten so low. And I can only imagine if we had let things like Agent Orange go for a lot longer than we did, if we had let remember that drug that was hurting babies that women were pregnant and they were taking this drug and the babies were dying, if we had let that continue, if we had not put in the environmental protections that we did back in the 80s and 90s, we would be looking at a situation now where our replacement fertility is negative for the first time last year in the United States. Our replacement fertility is now too low to replace our population. Imagine if it was 5 times worse than that. Imagine if out of every 5 children, only 1 was healthy after birth. Only 1. And then 2 went to the ICU, the rest were dead. If we had a situation like that, I don't think it would be that long before somebody would say, you know what, we have to do something. We have to do something drastic to get our birth rate back up. If these women don't want to have children, we're going to make them have children. And it could be the case where we're looking at a society where either A, you're not allowed to have children unless you beg the government for a license, which is what, the climate change people, and that's what they all want.
This is what's coming.
Yeah. And on the other hand, though, you have the equal and opposite reaction to that, which is you have to have babies and you're not allowed to use birth control, and you have to have as many babies as God wants you to have. And
so going back to the old ways.
Right, exactly. So either way, you lose your freedom. And either way, the virus wins, because that's both ways are the way which the virus operates. The virus operates on fear. In one instance, you have the fear of the world collapsing environmentally because we are overpopulated. On the other hand, you have the world collapsing in a police state kind of way, because you can't have an environment like that and be a healthy society. You just can't. You can't have a healthy society when there's that much fear involved. And the virus feeds on that fear. And so it's trying to push us into one of these two circumstances. And we have to not let it by staying in the middle, staying in the middle, staying in the middle, staying in the middle. Because either way, if you pick the extreme, you're screwing yourself. That's essentially what it is.
I've heard that they kind of want to lower, our fertility, and that's part of what this vacation is doing is lowering our fertility. And what they want to do, though, is so instead of us just, having a kid by chance, who knows what's coming, right?
Yeah.
They rather you go to a laboratory and just, have a designer baby.
Right.
That way, we're guaranteed, and whatever. So this is what's coming, right? But
yep.
Yeah.
I was just going to jump in and say that balance is, in my opinion, the position of power. Because if you are polarized in either direction, you can be manipulated. And that's where they want to keep people. They want to keep people polarized in one direction or another. Many years ago, I took a little quiz about political views. And it will tell you where you land on the spectrum. And I landed literally like right in the middle. And I was like, okay, cool. This is the best place to be. Now, I was all about, the Orange Man, because the Orange Man was doing a damn good job, in my opinion. But it wasn't a left-right thing by any means, because the Bush, for example, was the exact same as what we have right now. They're all from the same cabal. They're all from the, all of that.
Yeah.
However, when it comes to everything, when you're balanced, you're thinking critically. And they even released an article. I don't know if you saw the show we did, but it was an article in the New York Times that says critical thinking is...
I saw that.
Yeah, critical thinking is dangerous.
Unbelievable.
Yes.
I mean, you can't even make this stuff up. Like... And same with that lady that misspoke there, that newsletter about 27-year-old something or other. I mean, you can't even make this stuff up. I mean, it's just. So what worries me is that because this is so ridiculous, and that they really, really want all of us to take the vacation, that something else is going to get released. That's kind of what I'm worried about.
Yeah, that's the article there. Don't go down the rabbit hole. Critical thinking, as we're taught, isn't helping to fight against misinformation.
Yeah, we don't want that happening now.
Well, okay, so if you listen to like Dr. Malone and others like that, Dr. Malone was talking about how when you don't build up an immunity and you use the vacation instead, what that does is that naturally causes whatever it is to mutate. And it's going to mutate, and it's going to continue to mutate even worse and worse and worse and worse. And so, at first I was thinking nothing was released, and it's just, they're writing up a bunch of flu and cold and things like that. But then as I started to understand it, I'm thinking, okay, no, something was definitely released. They're even admitting it came from Wuhan, all that, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. But I think maybe the purpose of this was to release it in a semi-benign manner, compared to the amount of destruction that it has the potential to cause, but allow it to mutate slowly, with the purpose of it mutating slowly to stagger the reactions from it. And then you add the vacation to it as well, and that also helps to stagger everything. Because if you just had all of a sudden just a mass event, then that I don't think that's the way they want to go. I think they want to eliminate slowly but surely. I don't know if they will release something else, or if they're just going to allow this thing to mutate to a point to where it does become more and more and more aggressive, especially towards people who have not only taken this thing, but people who have not taken this thing too. Because we have seen, this is what convinced me, is when I saw it within my own family, when I saw people that I know for a fact are living a certain way, are not taking the vacation, are healthy in every regard, winding up in the hospital. Now I'm going, okay, this is something we have to reevaluate with new information.
Yeah, no, they definitely released something. I think what happened was it wasn't as effective as they were hoping. They were hoping that, I think our herd immunity, essentially, has gotten to the point where, we were able to fight this off, some people obviously didn't, and I'm not minimizing that. I realize some people, are actually sick and in the hospital, and, these things happen though. And apparently the flu season of 17 to 18 was one of the highest death rates we've had in quite a while, but they never mentioned anything about that.
That's right.
People die from flu and flu-related illnesses all the time, so it didn't quite work out the way that they thought. And for me, this is definitely not scary enough for me to go and take some experimental thing. There's just no way. And I'm pretty sure there's a lot of us are saying the same. So they're going to have to do something in order to convince us to take it. They'll have to scare us with something. So, and then we also have that notion that we're not going to be here that much longer. So that tells me that maybe something else is coming then. I don't know. I don't want to scare people, but then again, in one sense, you kind of want to know if you're going to be going, because then your the way you live life is probably going to change a little bit if you know that, hey, I got 2 more years, let's live it up, versus, God, I got another 50 years here, so.
That is very true. That's where I found myself to be, knowing that the time is coming up, sooner than later. I'm appreciating everything so much more. But, I definitely don't want to go from something like this, but I'm definitely not going to go get a vacation to try to prevent that from happening and then provoke that situation like that. But at the end of the day, the way that I just find solace in this whole thing is that it's just a game, and we're going to go home. And the way that I've seen it up to this point is that the wheel of reincarnation was broken. And it was broken in the sense that it was taking consciousness, pulling it into the wheel, recycling it back into the matrix. And it was doing so, number one, without the choice of the consciousness to exit the game, which I think we always had a choice, like, okay, we've played enough, it's time to go home now. But it's been recycling us over and over and over again. So that was one part of it breaking and the virus taking over. But the other part is I just lost my train of thought completely. I was talking about the wheel of reincarnation. It's recycling players too quickly. Recycling players too quickly as well was the next point that I wanted to make, which has caused this whole population boom. Which is like, you think about a computer program, you're playing The Sims, and all of a sudden you have 1,000 Sims on your screen, where your processor can only handle 20 of them at a time for just all intents and purposes. And so now the machine is running so hot, and it's running hotter and hotter and hotter as the wheel of reincarnation is spitting out people quicker and quicker and quicker, instead of putting them in that holding section before bringing them back in here. So we had two major problems with the wheel of reincarnation. And now, in my opinion, that wheel of reincarnation has been completely shut down. And so the only choice is, when we go, we exit. And if we get pulled back into that wheel of reincarnation again, I don't think there is coming back another round. But I think we've done all the shadow work. Everybody listening, people like you and I, we've done our shadow work. We've done all of our work. We've done our soul's purpose, or we're completing our soul's purpose. And we're not going to leave here until we've completed that soul's purpose. So when it's time to go, it's time to go home. And that's as much as we love this world. Cherie and I have had this philosophical discussion many times between ourselves. What's the point of being here? Like, what's the point? Is it to survive? Like, living in that survival mode, instinct of just surviving, going out to the woods, creating your own little cave and just surviving for the sake of surviving? To me, that's not appealing. Thriving. No. Communicating, communing with others, making connections, the experiences that we share with each other, and experiencing life and the emotions and, the up and down, the ride, and, all of that. That's what it's all about. But if this world is shutting down to the point of, even if it turns into a totalitarian dystopia and continues to go on rather than a complete system shutdown, do we even want to be here for that? Like,
no, I know, right? That's the thing.
Yeah. That's what I'm thinking really. Too.
I know. I had a lot of my friends here getting on board with the whole prepping, and I've been doing that for years. But yeah, I know I'm really kicking it up a notch now. And spending money that normally I probably wouldn't spend on that kind of thing. But I think it's very important to get on that now. But then again, it's like, well, okay, that's just gonna make me live here another month or two, or maybe 6. That's it. Because, if they cut off the food supply and everything else, like, where are we going to go? What are we going to do? I'm a renter here. If the landlord all of a sudden says, yeah, do you have your pass? You can't rent here unless you got the pass. That's probably common too. Next, so it's like, okay, so how much longer do I want to be on this ride? Like, do I want to have to go out and get an RV and move out into the bush by myself? Really? Like, that's where I'm going, like, yeah. So
we lived in the middle of nowhere for several years, and while it was a beautiful experience while we were out there, we had some great ayahuasca experiences out on the lake. You could see the whole Milky Way. It was gorgeous. After a certain period of time, the beauty of the trees, the beauty of all that, it starts to fade, and you no longer see that, because what you're missing is the connection with like-minded people of the same frequency, all of that. And I realized that life is about the connections that we make and the experiences that we have. And that's the only thing that we can take with us, is the connections we've made and the experiences that we've had. So if we're out in the middle of nowhere by ourselves, what's the point?
Yeah, I'm hoping, I'm thinking, what's going to happen is that we're all, and especially with all these people losing their jobs now, there's no more unemployed insurance or nothing coming for them. So I'm assuming that there's going to be a whole slew of us who are then, I guess, building a community. I guess. We're going to be going on the outside somewhere and building it. What else are we going to do?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's going to be us and them, two different, it'll be like a ghetto somewhere for us who have another vacation and, living in RVs and whatever. And then there's the rest in the city that's all chipped and tagged and whatever.
We've seen a lot of movies like that. Escape from LA. If you
Yes.
remember that one, Breakaway
Right.
Civilizations, Demolition Man, where the surface world is one way, and then you have people living in sewers eating rat meat and everything like that because they've outlawed meat. Yeah.
Another scary thing which has come to mind, I know this sounds kind of silly, okay? It's tongue-in-cheek, kind of has been. But it's kind of weird how, A, in Hollywood with all the movies and everything, and then B, the government is actually spending money and time on zombie apocalypse drills.
Oh yeah, they've been doing
What
that
is
for years.
that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes. Makes you wonder, And when you watch the movie Legend, well, that's what it was all about. It was the only guy that survived there was the guy who created the disease that created the zombies, right? And his whole mission was to try to get the antidote for this. Again, vaccine diseases causing this. So that's another thing that's the buzz out there, that's what's going to be happening to all these people who have taken a vacation. They're going to turn into one of those.
28 Days Later is another one of my favorite films.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
What's interesting
right.
is when this microbiologist was talking about how it had the prions from mad cow,
Mm-hmm.
it has the potential of turning into a real zombie
A
virus.
zombie type of thing, because
Yeah.
if you look at
There
the symptoms
is
of
an
mad cow,
actual
yeah,
disease like that. It has to do with sensitive to this. That was actually vampires. Because another one I just watched at the Val Helsing. I don't know if you've seen that one on Netflix.
Mm-mm.
I don't watch the
I'm
zombie
familiar
things.
with
Never
it, but
resonated with that. It's too gory for me. But
Yeah.
somehow I got through the whole Van Helsing because it was more vampires, zombie type of creatures. Somehow I was able to watch it. Very, very interesting because they're telling you things in there for sure, and this was just all of a sudden, it was a contagion that came out and everybody just became this way. Again, manufactured in the lab. Okay. So, I wouldn't be surprised if, it sounds kooky, right? This is, one of those things that makes people like us sound crazy for even thinking this way. But it just makes you wonder, why is the government paying for drills for this if there wasn't something to it?
right.
there is actually a zombie virus that they made. It's a rabies flu hybrid.
It's a rabies flu
And
hybrid.
it's something that they made back in 2010.
Yeah.
So
I'm
if
just saying-
you consider what's going
Yeah.
on now, which is a C virus, which has
Yeah.
thousands of strains, which includes the flu.
Right.
And all of a sudden you mix rabies into the mix, you have exactly
Right.
what they created.
Get all
Just look
that.
it up. It's on nationalgeographics.com. Zombie virus possible with rabies flu hybrid. October 27th, 2010.
Mm-hmm.
So there's something to look forward to. So I really don't want to be here if everybody around me is turning into those things.
Okay, I do want to be there for that. Now, I will stay for that.
Like,
'cause
that's pretty
We
exciting.
don't
What
have
an
guns
epic-
here.
What an
epic ending.
epic ending to a video game where you
Zombies
like
show up.
you go through your whole
There you
thing
go.
and then all of a sudden boom, final boss.
Zombies everywhere.
Right.
Zombies.
Well, I got all
Yes,
the
let's
food,
do
but I
it.
got the gun.
Well, that's when you get the
Yeah, no.
chainsaw, you get the axes, you get
One of the first things that Trudeau did when this whole virus came about was to take away the little bit of gun freedom that we had. The first thing he did.
Oh, they did that a couple of years ago in Australia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so look what's happening in Australia right now.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so whatever's happening over there, okay, and whatever's happening in China, that's a whole nother rabbit hole. I don't even want to go into that right now, but you go Google it and look and see what's happening there. That is what's going to be happening here eventually. Okay, so yeah,
The
So there's
United
that.
States, and this is mostly for our BTV people out there, but the United States has cut off mail to Australia.
Yeah.
So we can't ship
Yeah.
anything to Australia
You-
anymore.
Nothing. Yeah.
Unless
yeah.
it's incredibly
It's getting
expensive.
real.
Yeah.
It's getting real. Yeah. So it's scary. Yeah.
It is.
So interesting times. So on a positive note, though, how can we lead this into something positive now?
I have that dilemma on every single show that I do.
It's almost over. That's positive. It's almost over.
Drink, eat,
It's almost
be
over, that's true.
merry,
Be happy.
be happy.
That's true.
all we can do at this point. Create the positive frequencies among us. When we congregate like this with each other, I think this is the highlight of my life. When I'm doing shows, when I'm hanging out with my tribe, when I'm hanging out with your tribe, doing all that. This is what it's all about right now to me.
That's
and
true.
so
that is where it's at. Yeah, that's where I'm at too. And I really enjoy you guys when you're on. Like, it's like all nighter almost. When you guys are on, and I love it.
Cherie complains about those 6-hour shifts.
About the all-nighters.
You got me through a few night shifts, let me tell you.
I'm glad to hear that.
Thank you.
I'm glad to hear that.
No, you did. That's how I found you, because nobody else was streaming, at that hour except for you guys. And it was like, hey, there's
4 o'clock in the morning.
I've always been nighttime kind of.
I've always been a night owl too.
Yeah,
me too.
Yeah. I used to
me
love
too.
listening to like Coast to Coast and things like that in the middle of the night, and yeah. On a positive note is that we're all going to go home here pretty soon. There could be some kind of shift that takes place. And this is a weighing of the heart ceremony right now, like the Egyptian weighing of the heart. And the heart of the world is being weighed right now. It doesn't look good, but there's still a chance that more and more and more people will wake up and we'll see a major shift. And we might be seeing that major shift. I don't know what's going on in Canada. I don't know what's going on in other parts of the world. I know what's going on in Australia briefly, but here in the United States, for example, in New York, they have to have the National Guard come in because the nurses and doctors are quitting. And they're refusing to go along with this. Police officers are quitting. Business
this is happening here right now.
Yeah.
So.
Business is going to shut down. It's going to come to a screeching halt. And there was a famous quote. I don't remember who said it. He was a socialist revolutionist. So, take it for what it is.
Revolutionary.
Yeah, a socialist revolutionary. But he said, we're the ones, I'm trying to remember off the top of my head, but it says something like, we're the ones that run the machine, and until we get what we want, we're going to throw ourselves in the wheels and the gears of this machine, and this machine will not run without us, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Make it stop.
And so I wish I could remember the quote off the top of my head, but it's true. If we refuse to keep the machine running, the machine will not run. And I'm talking about the machine as in the system here, not the machine that we're inside of. But it could come to the point to where so many people are just saying no, that they have no other choice but to back off with everything they're doing and let go. And we're watching them throw each other under the bus right now. I mean, if I can get into some politics here real briefly, some great things that have been happening lately is that, number one, Fauci's under investigation. His emails have been revealed. It shows that he was wrong about everything, that what he was saying in private was completely different than what he was saying in public. We have General Milley, who has just been thrown under the bus for taking away the nuclear codes from Trump in 2020 and basically hijacking the government with Nancy Pelosi. He's under investigation right now in front of Congress. And it's not that those phone calls were quote-unquote leaked. It's that they're starting to throw each other under the bus. They're throwing Fauci under the bus. They're throwing Milley under the bus. And this is the thing about this virus, these vampires, whatever it is you want to call these things, they'll start turning on each other, and they'll turn on each other really, really, really quick. And we're watching them turn on each other.
That's right.
So it may not even be a matter of us having to do anything, but rather just sit back and watch them throw each other under the bus until the whole freaking thing implodes in their faces.
Yeah, you only have to do one thing. Sit there and hold the energy. Just hold the energy. Hold it in a balanced way. In a balanced way.
I guess it's a matter of if we can survive the next couple of years without taking the vacation, and that's the problem. It's going to get so bad that, it's like, we'll have to see who's left, I guess, at the end, once we start seeing all the long-term effects and everything else. But the hard part is, if they take away our jobs, which they're doing right now, and then, next thing you know, we're not going to be able to go to the store. We're not going to be able to, and so I don't know. Like,
how are things in Canada? Like, I haven't heard any firsthand testimony as to what's going on in Canada.
So we have our little, freedom rallies and stuff like that as well. Not as big as I would like to see them. I don't think people are quite aware of what's happening here. All healthcare and federal work, that's a lot of workers, and I think even themselves don't even realize that you have no job to go to on the 14th, unless you're taking this. Like, because I don't see any uproar yet, but I can just imagine on the 14th here now next week, there's going to be, and then we won't have enough healthcare workers, which means what's going to happen to the elderly population that we have, which is a huge elderly population that we have right now. What's going to happen to all those people? I wouldn't want to be old right now.
Well, I think that's why there's a soft kill in there. That's why it's in there.
It's not going to be able to take care of them anymore. So
and
if you have a grandparent or something.
Well, it's almost like they're being. It's almost like they're being uncruel in what they're doing. Because look at it this way, they know that the replacement fertility is such that even from the time of 1990 onwards, they knew around 2020, 2030, they're going to be in a bad situation as far as Social Security payments and things like that if things continue on the way they are, unless they have a huge culling, for lack of a better term, of the elderly population so that the younger population doesn't have to take care of so many of them at once. And this is the method. If you have lived a life where you have not taken good care of your avatar, you have not paid attention to your health at all, you've just eaten however you feel like it and all that, yes, you are probably going to die in the next 10 to 15 years from these prions, because that's essentially what mad cow is it's feeding your own brain to you, essentially, is what it came about as a result of. They fed brains of sheep to the sheep.
Isn't that crazy?
And it created this
brains again.
Illness.
No, I don't know.
Right, exactly. So I think this is almost like them trying to be uncruel and give them an out, or give their avatar an easy out, because it's going to be very easy for these people to succumb to heart disease or cancer or diabetes in the next 10, 15 years. It's going to be super easy for that to happen now.
Well, diet and everything else is taking care of that anyways,
yeah.
But,
and then on top of that, though, you do have people that have taken care of them, that have taken care of themselves. They have been responsible. They have been very active in their life. And those are the ones that I'm most worried about, actually, though, because those are the ones that are going to really suffer. They're going to feel horrible in their body, but not be getting worse, because they're treating their body as well as they can. And so they just have to live with this. And as somebody that lives with a good amount of discomfort, I have an opposition to that. I'm very opposed to making anyone live in a body that is that uncomfortable for that long. I think that's very wrong, and they see it as collateral damage in this depopulation effort.
And to something you said earlier, Nina, you said, I don't agree with the depopulation agenda. I wholeheartedly agree with you on that. I don't think that it's anybody's right to do that. When I was talking about that earlier, just for the record, I was just saying that this is what's going on. This is what we've been observing happening, and all we can do is warn people. But I mean, here we are in 2021. We've been yelling it from the rooftops for 13 years. Others have been yelling it from the rooftops longer. Alex Jones, people like that. It's like, how much more yelling can we do?
I know. I only caught on back in 2015 myself, so it's only been about 6 years for me. So about half your time. Yeah.
But that's a long time still.
But it is, yeah. And I've lost all my friends. I've lost, respect and family members and the whole yards, with this. And but here we are. And now they're mad because they're seeing that I'm right. You see.
Can I, if you don't mind me saying so, I don't think you lost anything. I think you found yourself.
Well, yeah.
You found your tribe, and you gained everything.
Right.
And we often look at that, like people in my family as well. They think I'm crazy. They think this, they think that, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, hell, the whole New Age community thinks I'm freaking nuts. But I found my tribe, and that's the most important thing. That's greater than anything else, in my opinion. So don't feel like you lost anything.
That is true, yeah. And I'm really grateful for you guys, actually, and the work that you guys are doing. And I'm resonating for sure. And, so I guess on a positive note is, just live our lives to our fullest every day and enjoy all the little things, so let's eat cake. Don't go on a diet.
Yeah.
Back to what we were talking
There's no
about.
reason to.
Don't forget about the diet and the exercise. Just have fun, eat, live, and whatever. But in moderation to an extent, obviously.
Exactly.
Of course.
If you okay, so I've been working out a little bit lately, and I got this little machine and all that. And what the first program that I started to do is a full body workout 5 days a week. That's not good to do, because you can't do a full body workout 5 days a week. You've got to give the muscle groups time to rest. So you do arms one day, you do legs another day, you take a rest another day, you do arms again. You have to give the muscles time to rest.
Mm-hmm.
And so on the same note, you can't exercise all the time. You can't diet all the time. You can't eat sugar all the time. You can't eat, crap all the time. You can't eat, vegetables all the time. But if you balance it all out, in my opinion, that's where the happiness is.
Exactly.
So,
a time and a place for everything, right? So,
yeah. We don't want to be polarized to anything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, speaking of spiritual growth, like I'm finding that there's just so much new information coming out. Everything is happening so fast that whatever I was at 6 months ago, that's a complete different, everything is just moving so fast too. That's another thing I'm noticing here. And I know I'm getting older, so obviously time is going to speed up a bit that way too. But yeah, no, interesting times for sure. That's for sure. And but I guess we were at 2.5 hours here, you guys.
Is it really? See, this is what happens. And then it turns into 6. And
it does.
It feels like 45 minutes. So thank you for having us on, Nina. This has been awesome.
Thank you so much for coming on. Yeah, I can't wait to see the response. I didn't quite have the chance to look at all the chat, but I'll get back to the chat later. I'll watch it once YouTube's done their thing. And then if there's any questions, you can always use the comment section down below there. If you have any, I'll try to answer. And I'm sure you guys will probably do the same. And I would love to have you guys on again if you guys don't mind.
Absolutely. Anytime. Yeah.
That'll be fun.
And again, we're restreaming on our channel. So tell people your channel again real quick.
So Nina the Mystic, both on YouTube and Facebook and Twitter and all of that kind of stuff. But my website is ninathemystic.net. That's pretty much your one stop there. I got all my links are in there, and you can find everything there pretty much. Yeah.
Okay.
So make sure you guys are liking the video and subscribing and going over to your channel. Do the same there. And we're just going to be one big merry eventually, right? So
absolutely.
That's what we got to do. I don't know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Stick together and stick to our guns. And hopefully, that's the thing. If we all stick to our guns and talk more about it, and that's another thing, that instead of, because everybody's like, oh, nobody wants to talk about it because we don't want to get shadow banned and all of this. You know what? We all have, I got Patreon, you got Patreon. There's other alternative places now that we can go to. And I'm pretty sure this is what we need to talk about, because everything else is irrelevant nowadays, isn't it? This is it. This is the last kick of the can here.
I did an album back in 2009 called Global Resistance. And if anybody wants to check it out, chrisgeomusic.com, you can download it for free. But a lot of the stuff was prophetic for what's going on now. I'm sitting down trying to write another album. And I can't think of anything to talk about except for the zombie virus, the CDC, everything that's going on. And I'm like trying to come up with lyrics, and I'm like, what? This is it. I've got like 10 songs that all pretty much say the same thing.
Yeah, and and I noticed too, the people are interested. They want to hear this. So even the ones who are asleep, they do naturally are gravitating toward it. Because they need it. They know that this is, where it's at. And, so yeah, keep up the good work, you guys. And can't wait for next time.
Likewise,
You too
Nina,
as well.
thank you so much. You are freaking awesome. And thank you for all the super chats that you've sent. And ultimately, thank you for having us on. This was so great to connect with you. And
It was.
you're
This was a
such
lot
a
of fun.
beautiful soul. And it's even nicer to connect with you like this.
Yes, likewise. Thank you.
Awesome. So
And,
let's get you on BTV sometime very
Yeah.
soon.
I would anytime. Yeah, let me know anytime.
Cool.
Absolutely.
Love you.
All right, thank you. Bye
Bye.
guys.
All right, so that was Nina the Mystic. I couldn't get her up on the screen with us because it was just creating some weirdness to do so. But
Okay.
she's. Oh, there you are.
I'm still here. Sorry.
Are you
She's
still
still
here?
here with us.
Oh,
I'm gonna leave here and take a break and then come and watch you guys on your channel. How's that?
oh, okay,
Sounds
awesome.
good. See you there.
I thought we were disconnected. I'm not sure how to disconnect this. So
You're
I've
not
never used
live on
this.
my channel now, but I can still see you.
Oh,
Oh,
okay.
really? Oh, okay.
We're
okay.
still live on ours. So.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Anyways, I'll see you on
I guess
your
I'll close the
channel.
window.
See you on the other side.
Love you. All right, so that was Nina the
That was a
Mystic,
lot of
who
fun.
popped in again mysteriously, mystically, like she did.
Uh-huh.
So let's take a quick break, and we will be right back. I referenced this track. We're in a lot of trouble, so I might as well play it because we are in a lot of trouble. I think some people wanted to take some. I think some people wanted to call in too, so we'll take some calls.
Okay.
Chris Geo back up in this 2020 vision.